live, brother. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. I was, being kind of get up, watch some football this morning. I think we're 3 Saturdays from University of or ULM, man. There at DKR, got kind of excited. I was like, damn, wish I had some college game day on or some big noon kickoff. And I was like, what the hell with this? Let me call Jeremy and ask if he wants to do a live this morning at 10 o'clock. Drink a little coffee with everybody that's kind of listening this morning to the show. Excited to have you on. I don't know. Me and Jeremy usually don't do morning shows, man. This is, I think, the second one we've ever done. I think the first one we did was maybe on an Instagram Live one time.
It was Instagram Live. We used to call it Coffee with Clint and Jeremy. And it was kind of cool back then. But same as you, this morning I got up at 5, finished writing the defensive backs previous show, and then went back and watched University of Louisiana and Arkansas, preparing for, just kind of walking through the games again. I watched 3/4 of Louisiana until it got out of hand, and then I watched the most of the Arkansas game, trying to figure out run fits and assignment football and gap, like I said, gap integrity, to use a word that Spencer Tillman used this morning. Have integrity in your gaps, do your job, be responsible for what you're responsible for, and then got ready to go do some landscaping, got dressed in some sweatpants and my old running shoes, getting ready to go, cut some hedges because we got some rain this week and going to try to clean up the backyard for fall. And you called and said, hey, let's pop on. I said, let's do it. So, yeah, it's a little different, but like you said, we're three weeks away from game day. Saturdays are big time in the fall, and why not start 3 weeks early and do this little thing that we're doing today? And it's really cool.
Yeah, I think we may do one next Saturday too. Probably do one next Saturday. To see the difference between what the scrimmage hosts and then obviously next week. And again, not sure what you're going to get to out of the scrimmage today, but I think covering some of the topics of the things we want to see. And good morning to everybody. First and foremost, good morning. People. Got Tracy in here asking who's got Bailey's with their coffee. A couple of people. One person said I went out for a 3-mile run. I was just sitting on the couch watching TCU in Texas this morning. And again, I don't want to go off a ledge here, but your defense showed up at pivotal times during the season. And then something happened and the offense wouldn't show up and they weren't playing complementary football. But I think, and this is, again, going to be really casual with the Kool-Aid, but there's no reason after you got up on Oklahoma, you played TCU, Bijan carried the ball down. He got, 35 times during that game. And then you got to Oklahoma and you had a big lead on them. And then you got to Oklahoma State and you couldn't score points in the third and fourth quarter to close that game out. It was a coin flip between being 5-1 and where we were sitting at after that Oklahoma State game. Really, really close, man. So that gives me hope to the season.
You're talking micro, and I went back and watched some of Arkansas this morning, and Keaton Crawford's foot is out of bounds at the 3-yard line after a muffed punt. Or we take the ball 0-0 on their 4-yard line and probably punch it in with Bijan because we were able to run the ball pretty effectively in the first half of that Arkansas game. But if we punch that in at 6-0, Cameron Dicker hits extra point 7-0 within 5 minutes of the game starting. But that little momentum swing, they were able to take the ball. Jefferson starts, mauling us with his big man quarterback run game. And it's 7 before you look up, it's middle of the second quarter, it's 17-0. So micro, like you talked about, not being able to hold, second half leads, not playing that complementary football, like your offense will get up and they'll do really well in the scripted piece and play really well for the first quarter, first half. And then their defensive coaches make adjustments and you're unable to counter. And then so you go 3 or 4 possessions of 3 and out or unable to move the football, playing field position. Ultimately, their team gets hot, your defense gets worn down, and they start running the ball. And then you get out of basic assignment football, integrity. And like I said, I really like that word. Hadn't used that word ever when talking about, doing your job in a particular scheme, but gap integrity, scheme integrity, knowing what the play calls for you to do and executing. And I saw a lot of that in the Arkansas game that I watched this morning, that the not having the gap integrity and not tackling well. And see, that'll be the focus for today's scrimmage is fundamental football. Be where you're supposed to be and make the plays you're supposed to make is one of the things I want to hear the coaches and players say after. And I think Ovi said it yesterday, is we're trying to just get fundamentally better. And if we do what we're supposed to do, then this defense should get better from what we saw last year, which was that 99 ranked, -4 in turnover margin, and making big plays and turn the ball over and getting the ball for our offense.
Yeah, like Carson Smith said, assignment football on the defense. Apparently Thursday there were some issues with assignment football and staying in your gap. And then again, that's one of those clear things that if you looked at last year's games, that's what kind of let these opponents back into the football games, was literally like a 4th-and-1 run that would take off to the, or a quarterback that's taking a draw and he's, running at 40, 50 yards down the line or down the field and setting themselves up for a touchdown. Kind of want to talk about here, what are some of the storylines that you want to see coming out of, and you're talking about assignment football, but I think probably the biggest one here, and I'm going to get to Tracy's question about kickers. Tracy Williams is in here today, and he sent us a question on the kicking.
And Texas brought in a kicker last night.
They did, from TWU. Transfer. Yeah.
So
from TWUs.
If you were worried about if it was Bert Auburn or Gabriel Lozano in the kicking game, and if you were worried about if it was going to be Isaac Pearson in the punting game, and you were unsure about those guys, bringing a transfer in at the 11th hour shouldn't make you feel any better. I'll say it like that. If you felt good about the guys you currently have on the roster, you probably don't go get one. But if you only have one punter on the roster, and let's just say we've seen Michael Dixon get hurt before. We've seen, punters, they'll headhunt a punter in special teams if you only got one on the roster, and you don't want your guy going down and not having a backup plan. So it's either one or two things. They're not sure of the guys they have on the current roster and needed an insurance policy, or the insurance policy is just for injury. So if that answers your question, Tracy, I'm sorry to cut you off, Clint, but I just thought that was something we needed to talk about.
And Sark was talking about that's one of the biggest things they're working on right now is coverages, punt coverage, kick coverage. The kicking game, I think they were, as of going in today, they were looking at, I think they had a 4 deep on who they wanted to play at those, specific positions. And I think after today's scrimmage, he said he wanted to get it down to a 3 deep. And then after next week, he wanted to get it down to a 2 deep and then know who he's going in there with. But I think from a punting and kicking standpoint, I think during the TCU game, I think, Dicker the kicker was 1 for 3 going through those first 4 games,
Yeah, he missed one against Arkansas.
Yeah, so consistency wasn't a thing that Dicker the kicker really had last year, but you could depend on him because he had been there for 3 seasons, and he had going back to the Oklahoma game, he won us that game. So in pressure situations, he'd go out there and squirt a little water on his face, get ready. He'd go out there, run, do a wink of the eye, and get out there because I think pressure wasn't a thing for him. But when you're talking about bringing in a new punter, a new kicker, it's not just a punter and a guy that kicks field goals, but when you're talking about, kicking the ball off, you hope you score a whole bunch of touchdowns this year. You want to got a guy that kicks it out of the end zone, so you're not giving your opponent an opportunity to actually return it at all. So I think short fields, field
position. The third aspect of the game is very, very important. Like against our defense, how we know it to be historically, not saying it's going to be that way this year, but you want to give them as long a field to drive as you possibly can. I want them to have to drive 85 yards, 80 yards. I don't want short fields because somebody shanked a punt or got plenty of hang time, but it only went 20 yards downfield. So it's important to get those guys. Again, it's the third aspect of the game, and it's very, very important. Puts points on the board, and again, establish field position both for the offense and the defense.
Yeah,
but I know you had another thought, and then I sidetracked you with
no. You're good. You're good. This is fine, man. Like Tracy Williams at Cameron, he's talking to Cameron Parker here in the comments here. If you're kind of scrolling through the comments, not worried about extra points, anything over 38, plus field goal. You have to be worried. You know what I'm saying? Because again, you don't want to be able to drive the field. Then all of a sudden, you want to score as many touchdowns as you can. You want that red zone percentage or whatever the case may be, or you get within the 30. You want to have an opportunity to score touchdowns every time. But that's I don't think any football team's ever gone out there and scored 100% of the time they've got down there, touchdowns. So obviously you got to have a field goal kicker that can get you 3 points versus 0 points. You don't feel like you have to go for it every time on the 40 on the plus 40-yard line. If you have a plus 30-yard line, when you haven't, because you don't feel comfortable with sending your field goal kicker out there to get you 3 points. Points are important, man. I think I seen some. Texas has played in the most games where it was within a touchdown. As far as points go at the end of the game. So field goals are important, man, and 3 points will win you a football game. So definitely got to have a kicking team. All right, so let's go to some of the things I wrote down this morning when we're talking about some of the storylines that we want to hear coming out of this scrimmage tonight, really press conference. And then obviously sourced information that's going to probably come into some of these, most of your boards, 247 Inside Texas. Quarterback position, what I want to hear is there any separation between the two quarterbacks? Because again, as you get into this, you're 3 weeks from football. You're 3 weeks from actually lining up and playing a different opponent. And I think today you need to start hearing there's some kind of separation in the quarterback battle. Do we think Quinn Ewers is probably going to win the job? I think it's about a 95% chance he does. But I think he needs to start separating himself from Hudson Card, or Hudson Card needs to start separating himself from Quinn Ewers. So I think, to me, that's probably the biggest one. We got a question from Cleary on Twitter that said, "Hey, do you think it's a problem that he hadn't named a quarterback? Now 3 weeks before football, do you see that as an issue?"
I don't see it as an issue, but like you, I wish that a quarterback that the stuff we're hearing out of camp and what I've heard out of spring ball is that there's a clear winner in this contest, that somebody's blowing it out of the water and there's really no second. But you've heard three names. You've heard Quinn Ewers, you've heard Hudson Card, and you've heard the performance of 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗘 Murphy. And they're all right there together from everything that you read and hear, that nobody's clearly separated themselves since spring. And you want there to be some clear separation. So when Steve Sarkisian announces who it's going to be, and again, we're 3 weeks out from game day, so you'd like to hear it sooner rather than later, who that guy is, and there's no questions about it from the team, from the fans, from any kind of media, second guessing Coach Sarkisian. But if that doesn't manifest, you still would like to have a decision sooner rather than later, so you can start specifically game planning for that quarterback, because there's some things that Quinn Ewers can do that Hudson Card can't. There's some things that Hudson Card can do with his legs that possibly Quinn Ewers can't, or 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗘 Murphy, whoever it may be. I don't think it's going to be Malik, but because he probably needs some time to grow in the system a little bit, but the arm talent is there. But whoever it is coming out of this quarterback battle, you'd like for them to separate themselves and for him to name them the starter as soon as possible. But I don't think it's a big deal yet. I think if next week or the second scrimmage comes along and there's not any separation and there's still hesitancy or doubt, then that could be a problem.
Yeah. I think the biggest question going into the season when you're talking about quarterbacks is can 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗘 Murphy over the next 3 weeks put himself in a position where he can actually be the number 2 guy behind the starter? So I think really you're looking at it now is that you're going to have a number 1 quarterback. And I think the race to 2 is probably going to be more important than the actual quarterback themselves. Because again, if you look at it, Hudson Card got injured last year. Casey Thompson got injured last year. And I was listening to, I believe it was the Oklahoma game, and they were talking about, Fox was talking about all these quarterbacks that got injured both in college football and in the NFL. So there's a good chance that you're gonna have a starting quarterback that may get dinged up in the middle of the season. It's who's your number 2 that's going to be able to come off the sideline that Sark's going to feel comfortable to be able to run his offense at the same level that his starting quarterback's running the offense. So I would love to see 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗘 Murphy, true freshman. We love 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗘 Murphy. We think his arm talent's off the charts. I think it's just repetitions for him, going through and learning schemes and doing all those other things. But I think it's really that fight for that second, who's going to be the second quarterback if and when that second quarterback has to come in. Not even if under injury, but if during ULM, who's going to come off if you're up on ULM in the first week, do you get Maalik Murphy some snaps in real game time action? And how many snaps does him and Hudson Card actually play?
And I popped this up because Josh says, I honestly believe if Card loses the job to Quinn that he'll transfer. I just don't think there's any net gain for Hudson Card to transfer out of the University of Texas in season. He can't play anywhere else. And everything we've been told is that, and we know of Hudson Card and Maalik Murphy, is they're great teammates. They will be engaged. So like you talked about, if an injury does happen to the starter, I think all three of these guys will definitely be engaged in their playbook. They'll definitely be ready to roll. And I really don't see any of them transferring out in season because they didn't get the starting job. Like I said, there's just too many opportunities out there. Things happen. Be prepared to play. Go help your team win. And like you said, be that guy that if something was to happen and your name gets called, that you're ready to execute. And because your teammates, you owe it to your teammates to be ready. And that's in any position, but especially quarterback.
Yeah. Again, we'll kind of see where it goes, man. Because again, the arm talent is there with Quinn Ewers. It sounds like he's, Xavier Worthy put out like a 10-minute YouTube video the other day. I'm not even sure if you've seen that, Jeremy, with him and Janae Bear, and they were racing and stuff. And he's like, hey, man, this is my quarterback. This is my quarterback. And he kept saying that. And he's like, I don't know if they're roommates too, but I think they all three might be roommates, Janae Bear, Xavier Worthy, and Quinn Ewers. Because he's like, hey, these are my roommates. This is my quarterback. So I think the trust is there. Now I think if you're listening to inside reports, it sounds like that Nair has become Quinn Ewers' safety blanket. You know what I'm saying? Like if all else fails, man, just throw it up to Isaiah Nair, man, and let that big dude go up and get it.
That's who I would choose. Him and Sanders, because again, Jatavian Sanders is 6'5" as well. Get the ball to those big guys. Like I said, they give you a catch radius to easily fit the ball in if you get in trouble. So, yeah, that'd be my security blanket. And I just want to throw this up real quick because Josh wasn't talking about this summer, this fall. If Hudson was to lose a job, he's talking about towards the end of the season. Yeah, that's why I just said I don't think there's any gain of anybody transferring out in season because, again, you don't get any eligibility this year to play anywhere else.
They talk about, Quinn Ewers, talk about boosters and stuff. And Josh is talking about that now. I don't think it has to do with boosters. I think that Steve Sarkisian has a quarterback that he likes. He likes a pocket passer. He likes a guy that's going to stay in the pocket and make the throws that are necessary to throws based on what the defense is giving them and be able to get the ball, have the arm strength to get the ball to wherever they need to go and make those decisions to find the open receiver. That's what Maalik Murphy and Quinn Ewers both have. If you go back at the previous regime under Tom Herman, he was more of a, hey, let's run the quarterback first. Let's pretty much with Sam Ehlinger, Bam Bam Sam was a damn fullback that was a quarterback that could make throws. And he ran the ball a lot. Same thing with Casey Thompson. Casey Thompson was brought in as a dual threat quarterback. Hudson Card brought in as a dual threat quarterback. They're not pocket passers that Steve Sarkisian's looked for. He put all his eggs in a basket when he went and got Quinn Ewers from Ohio State because he believes he's that quarterback of the future for Texas. And I think that about 95% of the fan base can believe that as well. I think there's going to be guys that are rooting for Hudson Card to be successful and be the starting quarterback. I just think that he does not bring to the quarterback table what Steve Sarkisian's looking for in a quarterback. That's why I'm saying we'll kind of look at when he decides to make a starter, what happens with Maalik Murphy and Hudson Card moving forward, knowing that Maalik Murphy is the kind of quarterback that Steve Sarkisian wants as well, because that's who he went after last year out in California and brought him into the program.
This is really good. Sark wants quarterback to be a quarterback. Harmon wanted quarterbacks to be Derrick Henry. That's hilarious. But the reason why Sark wants the quarterback to stay in the pocket is because Sark trusts his system. A running quarterback is generally an off-schedule play, right? It's not designed to run the quarterback. Quarterback draws, quarterback sneaks. But other than that, it's, run my system. Go through your progressions, RPO, hand the ball to Bijan when it's available. If it's not, option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. That's because Steve Sarkisian trusts his system, and he wants the quarterbacks to operate as a system. And I want to go back to the Ohio State Quinn Ewers thing. That's a relationship, right? Steve Sarkisian didn't seek Quinn Ewers out at Ohio State as much as Quinn Ewers wanted to play at the University of Texas. Once Tom Herman was gone, This was Quinn's dream school. He had a guy like Stroud sitting in front of him. Who wouldn't, make that link? He wanted to play at Texas originally. He's got a guy who's a freshman playing in front of him, probably for 4 years. Is he going to beat him out? I don't know. CJ Stroud is a great quarterback. Quinn Ewers is a great quarterback. They were both, top level high school football players. But that relationship, now you got a guy down here in Austin that's a prolific play caller, coached many great quarterbacks. It was just a relationship. I don't think Sarkisian, when he took the job, called Quinn Ewers immediately and said, hey, I need you to come down here and save this program. I think it was one of those things where they both needed each other. Quinn Ewers needed to get out of Ohio, come back to the state, go back to his dream school, and Steve Sarkisian wanted to fill his quarterback room because he's done that historically, filled with top-level quarterback talent. He's always had rooms like that.
Yeah, talking about from David here, Quinn needs to quit throwing interceptions. I think that's, again, if you go back and look at some of these quarterbacks that were gunslingers, hell, in the NFL and in college football, obviously, number one, Steve Sarkisian talked about turnovers yesterday, and he wants to have a plus 10, plus 15, plus 20 turnover margin because it equals victories at the end of the season. He says 10-win teams don't have a -4 turnover margin. They have like a 10 to 20 turnover margin. So yeah, obviously this is going to be important. This is going to be a decision that Steve Sarkisian has to make. But if Quinn Ewers can make those throws and he has a 5-to-1 interception ratio, is that good enough for Steve Sarkisian? Because if you go back and look at Casey Thompson last year, within the first, I think, 4 games, he had, a better quarterback QBR than the previous 4 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. Six touchdowns, whatever it was, back to back. I think 21 or 23 drives he led to points. So what is the turnover margin? What is the turnover margin that Steve Sarkisian's willing to live with a quarterback like Quinn Ewers? If he goes out there and throws 5-6 touchdowns, is he okay with the interception during the middle of the football game? Obviously, it's just one of those things you got to deal with. To me, shit, if you're a 5-to-1 ratio and you've thrown 40 touchdowns in a given year, which is definitely possible in Steve Sarkisian's offense, is a 5-to-1 ratio. You're talking to what would that be?
60 to 1.
60 to 1. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm taking 3 to 1. That's 36 touchdowns, 12 interceptions over a 12-game season. That's pretty doggone good numbers. I mean, would I rather be closer to 40 and 8? Absolutely. But going back to numbers, and I'll touch on this when we go to the defensive side of the ball and what we're looking for. Just watching Louisiana and watching the Rice game this morning, trying to watch those first 3 games, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Rice. I grabbed a little bit of stuff from the defense. It's not gonna make you feel good. Basically, right in the middle of our position preview podcast, but it's the truth. But yeah, I mean, he gives you if he can give you explosive plays and touchdown throws that other quarterbacks on the roster can't give you, that's a plus in his side of winning this quarterback battle. And I've already talked till we're blue in the face. I mean, we do a lot of shows about going through your progression. Just give what the play gives you. Take what the play gives you. Don't same thing we're talking about on defense. Do your job. Take what the play gives you. If you don't see anything to get the ball out of bounds or try to get the ball out to Nair, like you talked about earlier, Jatavian Sanders as a security blanket. But just don't try to force things. Again, I think these receivers are going to find themselves open. I don't think he's going to have to be throwing into tightly covered receivers because of the level of receivers that we have on the football team. And you always get 5 back there. You know what I mean? If you don't like the pre-snap look, hand it off to 5. That's always an option and a very good option to me.
Very good option, man. It's crazy how good he is, man. Talking about Bijan Robinson, man. I've been watching these games after games, man, and it's like it's ridiculous how good he is, man. He could turn a 2-yard loss into a 7-yard gain with a spin, But Candace says it right, man. Where all those interceptions on Quinn Ewers or wide receivers not in the right spot because again, you got a guy coming in. So obviously it's going to take them time, repetition. And I think that's why it's important for him to name a starter now because now you get 80 to 20% of those first team snaps. Now you're creating that timing with those wide receivers. It could be timing issues. Go ahead, Joe.
And it's always a catch-22, and we talk about this in the spring and the fall. to hear Ovie Oghoufo talk about Diamante Tucker Dorsey getting a pick yesterday because he's in the right place is a great thing for the defense. Linebackers getting picks is not something that you saw a lot of over the last couple of years in this defense. So that's a great thing, right? They're where they're supposed to be, and they're picking off balls. But then in the same sense, you're like, why did they make that? Why did they throw that interception? Did they not have enough time? Is the offensive line breaking down? Did the ball get tipped at the line of scrimmage? Did the receiver run the wrong route? Was it an overthrow? Was it an underthrow? Was it a tip ball? Like, that's the problem with practice repetitions, because every time the offense does great, the defense did bad. So that's why I can't wait for 3 weeks from today when we're playing somebody else, because it's easy to see then exactly what your wrinkles are and what you need to fix and what's going well and what's not. Because, again, every time a defensive lineman gets a sack, an offensive lineman busted his play or didn't play well. Anytime a secondary member gets an interception, the quarterback or the receivers messed it up. So I don't know. I love scrimmages. I love what they allow players to do is get reps in pads against formidable competition. But at the same time, I think it creates more questions than it does answers sometimes.
All right, let's talk about earn, not given, right? Best available players. Let's play the best ones. So let's move on. I think we've talked about quarterback at this particular point enough. We'll kind of see where it kind of too deep on both offensive, defensive lines. That's another storyline you want to hear out of the first scrimmage, right? Because right now it is a mush or a mess of offensive linemen. You don't know. Me and Jeremy would have thought that Jake Majors was safe at center. We don't even know what's going on with there now. Hayden Connor playing left guard. Kelvin Banks getting runs with the twos. Cameron Williams getting runs with the ones. Junior 𝗟𝗟𝗓𝗏 moving over from his guard position to center. Cameron Williams getting run with the twos, and then you got Cole Hudson in there starting with the ones. It's a damn mesh of offensive linemen. But it's, to me, the best thing that as a Texas fan that I can see, and this is just my opinion, is you start supplanting these guys that have been there for year after year after year that have met their ceiling, right? And you allow these other guys that have a higher ceiling to get in there and start playing now versus waiting. So to me, what does that offensive line look like after the first scrimmage today? Because again, Kyle Flood's gonna pick his guys, and then I think it's important that whoever he picks now starts working together over the next 2 to 3 weeks to create that what's the word I'm looking for? Create that
continuity.
Continuity. Thank you, Jeremy. Continuity with each other. You know what I'm saying? Because I think it's important. Jake Majors has been calling the plays from the defense or from the offensive line, kind of establishing what the defensive front looks like, who's the middle linebacker is, and so on and so forth. But Junior 𝗟𝗟𝗓𝗏, with his experience over the last 3 years, I don't think that's going to be a problem for him. I think he's seen probably every front, every defensive scheme. So I don't think that's going to be a problem for him. But go ahead, Jeremy. I think you got a thought before I start ranting.
Because you're saying because you're saying we didn't know, but we did know. Because if you go back and watch our offensive line position preview, we said that we could get all 5 players right and have all the positions wrong. We said we could get all the positions correct and all the players would be wrong. We knew that there was 5 returning guys with experience, and there were 7 freshmen that had all these accolades, and they were going to find themselves intermingled in the 2 deep. We knew that. It was play your best players. Find out who your best 5 are, like you said. Put them in the best position to succeed and go forth. I love the saying, earn, not given. Absolutely. Everybody, when they walked out on that practice field last Wednesday, should have known that you're going to have to earn your position over the next 4 weeks. And if you do not, then you will find yourself on the sideline against Louisiana Monroe. And regardless of classification, freshman, redshirt freshman, sophomore, if he's the better player. And I love that. Again, that's something that Steve Sarkisian brought to our attention this year that I'd never thought about. I've been playing team sports since I was 6 years old, and I never thought about it. If you got capable players that are equal in talent at that particular point, then you play the younger player because they have the larger upside. This guy may have leveled off like you talked about. He's a fifth-year senior, took advantage of his extra year of eligibility because of COVID. He's still on the roster, still churning out, but he has no more growth potential. Whereas you got this freshman or sophomore who's at that same level, who has a ton of growth potential through repetitions in game and practice and scrimmage. Let them have the job and let them try to get beat out next year by the next 5-star that comes up to try to take their job. That's how this program becomes great again. And like I said, it's going to be a mess on the depth chart, and I want it to be a mess up until the time we play Louisiana Monroe, because I want these guys to continue to compete, practice in, practice out for the job. And that goes across every position: offensive line, defensive line, secondary, everybody.
Yeah, Rob Most said, put me on the 𝗟𝗞𝗞𝗘 fan bus. He said he'll drive it. All right, so I need Rob to get his bus driving license, man, so he can drive that bus, the 𝗟𝗞𝗞𝗘 fan bus. I got
a favor from you though. When you get him on the bus, make sure him and Cam Williams are the last two loading, because those are the last two seats I want filled right behind you, so they can be the first ones getting off. Or you can book in them. You can put one on first and one on last, but my preference is you pile them in last and let them be the first off, because they're pretty doggone intimidating, 6'7", 370 pounds.
Terry Freeman, if we're playing growth potential guys all year, we're probably not having a really good season. We're probably not having a really good season if we're playing the same guys over and over again that have produced the same results.
Absolutely.
That's the problem. That is the problem. If you want the same results, if you want the same results that you had last year, you continue to play the same guys. That's it.
And in my mind, you have no choice. 57 out of 85 are freshmen or sophomores. Your roster is going to dictate that you have to play upside guys. You don't have very many upperclassmen on this roster. And the upperclassmen that you do have is the same guys that these underclassmen are competing for their starting jobs. It's easy. There's only 27 left of the upperclassmen. And they're the guys we've been talking about during these position previews that may not need to have that job, necessarily have to have that job anymore.
And I'm gonna disagree with this one too, Shadowbeard, but that means there's zero development. If you get the same result, sounds like a coaching issue. Absolutely not. The guy has met his ceiling, right? He had whatever his floor was at that point, 3 years into a system with multiple offensive line coaches or defensive line coaches. I don't know if there's any more trajectory than what you can get out of them. I think you get a player and you coach them up play after play after play after play, but they still consistently go out there and get beat. I don't think it's no longer a development issue. I think they have officially met their ceiling, and you have to bring a guy in there that has a ceiling that's higher than them. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm sorry. When I played at DeSoto High School, Stacey Mitchell ran a 4.340. Gerald Daniels ran a 4.340. Byron Hanspar ran a 4.45. I was practicing as much as they were. I was conditioning as much as they were. Might have been putting more time in off the clock than they were. But guess what? Jeremy Lockley was never going to run faster than a 4.9. Bottom line up front. That's it. Like coaching can only do so much. If the player just doesn't have the natural talent, then that's all you're going to be able to get. The coach can get a good player to great. He can get an average player to good, but some through technique and scheme, right? But at a certain point, your athletic ability manifests. And that's when players of greater capabilities or greater athletic talent pass you up. That's just I go back to Zach Collins, the trainer for DJ Campbell, Andre Kojo, and Trevor Gooseby, the guy that we had on the show about a month ago. And he said that. He said there's a certain time when a coach or a trainer has to be real with an athlete. You know, you reach your max potential. You are now a second-team player because the guy that we just brought in last summer, this summer, has passed you up. That's athletics. That's how it works.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about defensive line now, because it's almost
sweating, brother. And I'm not cutting the grass yet.
Look, it's because all that coffee, man. I'm like a cup and a half in, man. But I think this 10 o'clock show is actually really, really good. Man, we got 129 people in here, 131, man, watching right now on a Saturday morning. It's replaced game day. It's replaced game day.
Drinking.
Yeah, day drinking.
Hey. Working man's talking about day drinking. Tracy Williams is talking about day drinking. It's 10:34 on a Saturday morning. I don't drink anymore. I got coffee and water over here, but hell, if it helps you tolerate Texas football talk a little better, to have a little, sip of something this morning, get after
it. Tracy said, did he just say a 4.9? Jay was definitely faster than a 4.9.
Absolutely not, brother. Absolutely not.
I could definitely beat Jeremy in a foot race. All right, he's got the size, but I could definitely beat Jeremy in a foot race. That's for sure. All right, we may have to race one of these days. We may do it down Bebo Boulevard before a football game or something.
I will say that was I will say that was probably that time was probably my sophomore year going into my junior year, or maybe in my junior year going into my senior year. But I don't remember. That's the last time I remember ever being. Hell, they used to run me with the linemen, dude. Like I wasn't in there with the skill positions. Like I ran just before the linemen ran their 40s. I'm telling you, technique matters. Getting your nose in there matters. But yeah, 4.9 was the cap.
So there's a lot of linebacker questions up at the top, man. We're actually going to be dropping our linebacker. We dropped our defensive our defensive ends edge preview last night. So if you hadn't had an opportunity to watch that, man, we talk a lot about the edge. We talk about what Alfred Collins, 𝗟𝗏𝗡 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗘 can actually add to that room outside of what we think Barron Sorrell is going to do, what we think the trajectory of 𝗟𝗏𝗡 is. So definitely, if you haven't watched that one, go watch that one. But want to get to the defensive lines right now, man. Let's talk about defensive line because I think it's going to have the same impact, if not bigger impact, than the offensive line. Because of the skill talent you have on the defensive line, or the offensive line, the skill positions you have on the offense is going to allow you to have an average to good offensive line and still be productive. No doubt. Again, hand it off to number 5, get it to number 8, get it to number 18, get it to number 3 or 0 now. And the list goes on and on with these guys, 2, 7, so on and so forth. Defensive line is probably going to be the most pivotal position this year. Yes or no?
Yes.
On the football team.
Yes. I think I said that the other day when we did D-line. Because interior pressures is a must. I can manufacture perimeter pass rush with my linebackers. I can create perimeter pass rush with my corners coming off the edge because I trust Anthony Cook can drop down and play corner. So if I want to do corner blitzes, I have that ability because I got Anthony Cook in the backfield. Again, I made my secondary, the 5 deep across the secondary cover guys, whether it be Jahdae Barron, Keaton Crawford, Anthony Cook, Ryan Watts, Deshaun Jameson. They all have coverage potential. So I could do some different things, bringing them guys from the back end. But I don't want to have to do that. I want my front 4 to do that job. I want my front 4. I don't have to get sacks on every play. And this is what I was going to say earlier. So I went back and watched the first 3 games from last night to this morning, talking about Louisiana, Rice, and Arkansas. And during the Louisiana game, towards the end, I remember it was our friend Tim Brando, tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic, and Spencer Tillman. And Spencer says Texas just notched their 5th sack. He wasn't accurate because I went back and looked at the stats. They got 4. And so then I went ahead a little bit and I watched a little bit of the Rice game, and they had 3 sacks. So 7 of their 20 sacks, and if you count Oklahoma, 9 of their 20 sacks were in 3 games. 4 against Louisiana, 3 against Rice, and 2 against Oklahoma, which leaves 11 sacks for basically 9 games. So 1 sack a game. And I started thinking, well, why does that happen? Because it seemed like with a 3-man rush, they did better than a 4-man rush. So I kind of jotted down my 2 deep, right? Or my 3-man alignment. And here's what I got. I got 𝗟𝗏𝗡 starting at one end. I got Byron Murphy starting at the nose, and I got Alfred Collins outside. I got Tucker Dorsey as my middle linebacker, Jalen Ford as my weak side, and 𝗟𝗏𝗡 doing his thing wherever they decide to line him up. And then, of course, the defensive backs that I just talked about, Cook, Barron, Crawford, Jameson, and Watts. So that's my 3-down lineman. But I said all that to say I think 3-3-5 may be the look that I would go base with because of 𝗟𝗏𝗡 𝗟𝗏𝗡 and my trust in Diamante Tucker Dorsey and Jalen Ford and my back end's ability to cover. But I said all that to say this: those 3 guys gotta be able to push 5 guys around. They got to be able to stalemate with those, and then that allows me to do a lot of playing around with my back end. That's something I'm really interested in seeing and hearing about in today's scrimmage is who shows out on the defensive line, because again, I said all that to say, yes, I do believe it's the most important position on this football team.
Yeah, I just think what you're looking at is who are your 3-down linemen, who are your 4-down linemen, when you're looking at the 2 deep coming out of this first scrimmage, moving into the second scrimmage, because we again, you can't keep running the same people out there each and every week and expect a different result. So I think at this point, you try your hand with those guys that were successful, and we ran through it during the edge, during the defensive line. We ran through specific numbers, snaps, how many pressures the individual got. I'm gonna tell you that that Byron Murphy got 15 inside pressures last year. 15, I think it was 15, which would have been second or third on the entire team. So I think that somebody was asking about, talking about interior pressure. Byron Murphy is the one that gives you interior pressure. He had 15 pressures from that nose tackle position last year. So I think it's there. Absolutely, I think it's there that you get that interior pressure. I think if you're looking at 4 down, I'm going with the 𝗟𝗜𝗞𝗘, Byron Murphy, 𝗟𝗜𝗟𝗓𝗏, and probably 𝗟𝗚𝗏𝗏 Collins. Those are the guys that are going to give you, based on what I've seen last year, they're going to give you the pressures from that defensive line, but they're also able to set the edge. 𝗟𝗏𝗏 Collins shows and flashes, and I think this is where the coaches get highly agitated with him, right? Because you see his athletic talent, you see how long he is, you can see what he can do from the defensive end spot. The same thing with 𝗟𝗏𝗏, but it's in flashes. It's not consistent. And if you get a consistent 𝗟𝗏𝗏 Collins this year, you get someone like Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat or Keandre Coburn show up, and then all of a sudden they're getting interior pressure versus taking on double teams and able to hit gaps and try to get to the quarterback from the interior. I think it's going to open up your pass rush that much better from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the edges have the toughest job on the defensive side of the football. Again, they got to set the edge in the run game, and when they're not running the football, they got to quickly diagnose that they're not running the football and put perimeter pressure on the quarterback. It's a tough job, and just with my 3-man front of Ovie Oghoufo, Byron Murphy, and 𝗟𝗏𝗏 Collins, listen to my second team, and I think this is where you're able to roll those guys more often. If this 3-man front works, you'd have a second group, and again, they may see it different than I do, and they probably will. But Barron Sorrell, either Coburn or Sweat in the middle with Moro Ojomo on the outside. That's a pretty good second team. I feel like they could consistently bring pressure, not have that much of a drop-off from that first team. I'd like to see it, but, I mean, historically I've been a 4-man guy or a 4-man front kind of guy. I prefer the 4-man front, but with this particular linebacking group, in the secondary, I think you would benefit from a 3-man front and then allowing DeMarvin Overshown to do whatever he wants to do, whether it be rush the passer from the edge or it sets you up to play games with him coming up the middle. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, they have things they can do.
Yeah, I think if you're working a 3-3-5, I think it comes down to sure tackling, though. And I can tell you, after the first 5 games I've watched from last year, Anthony Cook is definitely a safety. I can tell you that now. Anthony Cook is built to be a safety. He's going to be a damn good one. It would not surprise me if his NFL stock didn't rise this year, because safety's got to be able to cover, and he's done it at corner, he's done it at nickel. In the NFL, they expect a safety to be able to cover wide receivers. But he's probably the best damn tackler we got on the football team. I've watched probably 5 games, and I don't think I've seen Anthony Cook.
He broke his microphone. So while he's fixing his microphone, I'm going to pull up this comment from Jason. It says, scheme matters. We gap scheme instead of trying to penetrate. I think Grinch had it right. Passing league to focus on more negative plays. Again, behind the chains. That's instead of holding the point of attack, right? And that's what we're talking about. We need more than 20 sacks. Like, put them behind the chains, tackles for loss, sacks, and that just stalls a drive. Between that and pre-snap penalties and holding penalties, the penetration, especially with the group of athletes that we have, the quickness of Byron Murphy, that they were talking about Jaray Bledsoe's quick twitch. We know that T'Vondre Sweat can move at 340 pounds. The athletes, and Collins the same way, has that ability to get inside and penetrate quick and shoot the gap and make tackles for loss and put pressure on the quarterback. But I wholeheartedly agree. Instead of holding the point of attack and letting the fight come to you, go to it. So yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jason, with your comment.
Next thing, in talking about defense scheme, the next thing I want to talk about is the ability. I'm not sure. Was I muted a while ago for about 15 seconds?
Yeah, you hit something, I think, for about 15 seconds. Yeah.
So no worries. All I was saying is that Anthony Cook's the best sure tackler on the entire football team. Through 5 games, I haven't seen him miss a tackle at all. So from a safety position, that's a guy you want to come downhill. And he's not afraid to make contact either. He's not the biggest guy in the world, when you're talking about size. But he's not afraid to make contact, and he's probably the best tackler we have on the entire football team. So from a safety standpoint, I think his stock's going to rise because I think he meets everything that in NFL safe, what you're looking for in NFL safety.
And this is why they moved him back to safety, because they want all corner coverage guys in their back end with Watts, Crawford, Barron, him. I think the only guy that they have back in the 2 deep that I would say is not as consistent coverage-wise as those guys is Jaron Thompson. He's more of a run stuffer in my mind compared to the other guys we just talked about. But that's why he played star. That's why he played slot, because he would put his hands on receivers and reroute them when they had the whole field to work with. And, yeah, he's excellent in that role. But I know from talking to him, and Clint knows from talking to him, that he loves being able to play that safety position and being able to run that back end, make those calls, help those other players that are playing in front of him, be in the right spot, make the right adjustments, and ultimately cover the receivers. So, yeah, Terry, he is a great coverage guy, especially, like you said, puts his hands on folks. The kind of, press man coverage that we want to see out of a Watts, a Gilbo, and those guys from today forward. And that's something we're interested to hear coming out of the scrimmages is have they stopped playing off man coverage and started getting in receivers' grills off the line of scrimmage and putting hands on them. Yeah, excited.
That was one of our talking comments was exactly that. Like, hey man, they got to get to a point where they again, you go back and watch these football games. They're lining off 6-7 yards off these receivers, and it's 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. Now you're giving them a quarterback an opportunity to 3-step drop and get the ball out. And your cornerbacks who are good tacklers, Jameson is good at once the receiver catches the ball, he gets him, but it's past the sticks. What I want to see coming out of here is, again, if Steve Sarkisian's talking about being aggressive, you got to take the opportunity, or you got to take the chances of being beat over the top versus allowing these 6, 7, 8 yards completion from these quarterbacks to these receivers on the other end. Hell, I'd rather get beat. Shit. Josh Thompson pulled down a damn receiver from I want to say TCU in this TCU game I was watching this morning. He got beat over the top. Hell, 15 yards is better than letting them catch it for 60 yards and taking it to the house, right? So play man press coverage and take those. If they want to take those shots and beat you over the top, 15-yard pass interference is better than getting beat for 80, but it's also better than getting 6, 7, 8 yards every time they have an opportunity to throw the ball.
But you can run press man coverage and still have 2 guys in the back end. That's what they're going to do is press man coverage across the front and still have 2 deep safeties. And I need to see them safeties come closer to the line of scrimmage too.
That's what I want to see.
Too many times we got burnt on a run play and the safeties are 12, 15 yards deep. I'm watching Schooler moving back at the snap of the ball from the middle of the field out to just running himself out of the play. So they need to get set. Those 2 deep safeties need to get set. They need to get set closer to the line of scrimmage and allow them corners to do what they do. Yeah, occasionally they're going to get beat over the top if they're not quick enough to get back there. But I need to see them closer to the line of scrimmage because I think they're athletic enough and these corners can put hands on these receivers enough to where I'll live with that because I need them to help me in run support when it's a run and not be 15 yards back from the line of scrimmage, still moving at the snap of the football. So I think, like you said, bend don't break is fine, but they need to be more aggressive between the 20s. Like they have to get negative plays, they have to get penetration, they have to get sacks, they have to get tackles for loss, they have to force holding calls, and they got to get their safeties playing up. They could play too deep, but they need to be closer to the line of scrimmage. They need to have their cornerbacks up on these receivers within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage.
So what I want to hear out today's scrimmage is that, hey, they changed the scheme. They talked to Xavier Worthy. They talked to Isaiah Neary. Who are they talking to? Jordan Whittington. And he says, damn it, I was punched in the face the entire time by Ryan Watts. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was physical. These corners were physical with us. You know, they didn't just let us get a free release off the line. So that's one of the things I want to see coming out of here. But you're talking about, you know, allowing the safeties to come up. I think that's what 𝗟𝗓 Barron allows you to do. Because if you go back and look at 𝗟𝗓 Barron, his ability to in the limited snaps, which he had quite a bit of them last year. He's a sure tackler. 1, 2, and he's really good in coverage against the nickel slot. So I think you don't have to have someone over the top of him, you know, in a Jaron Thompson or a Keaton Crawford or a Anthony Cook. I think that you can trust the guys that you have out there at your corners to play man on man. If you trust a 𝗟𝗓 Barron to be able to cover the nickel slot man on man, it allows those safeties to come down, because what's going to happen is they're going to take advantage of the run again. You have 2 high safeties. What are they going to do? They're going to put a hat on a hat, right? Hat on a hat. And then they're going to be able to run for 4, 5, 6 yards. And then that's how they gassed you last year over and over and over again. I think you bring one of those safeties up, you play single high safety, allow you to bring up one of those safeties, and Anthony Cook, who's your sure tackler, allow, you know, 𝗟𝗓 or either Keaton Crawford or Jaron Thompson to play on the back end. And I think that fixes your run game. But at the same time, you allow these cornerbacks, nickelback, to be able to play. And if you have to if they go 4 wide and you have to bring Anthony Cook down or whatever in man coverage, you know you have a safety back there that can also do the same thing.
This has been a great 50 minutes, man. Like, when you decided you wanted to do this, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but these guys are coming, bringing good comments, good questions, good aspects. It's a really good discussion. There's 138 folks in here right now. I'm going to take an opportunity to pub channel because we haven't yet, and we've been 52 minutes talking. Again, first scrimmages today. Let me talk about what we put out this week. A live on Tuesday, a live on Thursday. Threw out edges last night, so go back and watch the edge preview talking about Ovia Gofu, Barron Sorrell, and then we kind of included Alfred Collins and DeMarvion Overshone in that mix and talked about what they could bring. Cut linebackers yesterday evening. Planned on putting that out this evening. And then we wrote cornerbacks and safeties this morning. So please, I said all that to say, please like this show. If you do like this show, please hit the like button. If you have not subscribed to Texas Football Talk, please subscribe to Texas Football Talk. We're trying to keep that content coming. And really appreciate you guys coming in here this morning. But this is a really burnt orange glasses talk about the defense, which is, as like I said, the defensive line I struggle with. A ton of upperclassmen who have not progressed or produced the way we thought they could. But then I thought with the inclusion of Diamante Tucker-Dorsey and the progression of Jalen Ford, this linebacker core was going to be pretty good. And then I started reading these football preview magazines, and Phil Steele kind of feels the same way. The third best linebacking core in the conference, behind Oklahoma and Kansas State. And then we start talking about the back five or however you see it. And it's progressively getting better as we're backing up in this defense. And that's why I'm saying that I really believe that front is the most important position on this football team this year.
I figured this was going to come up, and I'll give my 2 cents on this. You know, Candace,
because we disagree.
Is there any inside notes on Elijah Hall? I look at it like this: you're trying to build a culture, you're trying to build a program. You know, for me, I spent 22 years in the Army, right? And culture, values are communication skills. A family is how you build the best program or the best unit, however the case may be. But I also think I was surrounded by 400, privates every 16 weeks here on Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. And they all make mistakes. Between the ages of 18 and 22, you have the ones that go out and make mistakes. And if I was to say, hey, this guy went out here and he decided to jump in the dam, he got drunk and he decided to jump in the river walk, right? And then all of a sudden I got to pick this guy up from the San Antonio Police Department after he spent his 23 hours and 30 minutes in there, because 24 hours, you got to pick them up. We have 2 options. either put him out of the Army and put him back on the streets where he came from, and hopefully he's successful, or you hand out a punishment. And hope that they fix themselves. Obviously, Ojai Hall has been booted from one program. I think that Brennan Marion and Steve Sarkisian thought that they could deal with his issues and with his problem issues. Suspending him, it definitely really doesn't tell you much. It could be, 3 games, 4 games, 5 games. It could be like, hey, you're going to watch practice, sitting over there in shorts and in a t-shirt. We're not going to let you see the field. But really didn't give you an answer. But I have to go to Steve Sarkisian on this one. Steve Sarkisian is going to know what's best for his program at this point. If he thinks that Ojai Hall is going to be a problem for his team while he's trying to build that culture and hold people accountable, it's probably going to be a longer suspension. If he thinks that Ojai Hall, after 5-6 weeks got his stuff together and he's figuring it out, then he lets him back on the team. So it's obviously going to be Steve Sarkisian and what he feels his program needs are and how he wants to build his culture. But that's really all there is to it.
And I'm just glad he didn't get kicked off the team. Again, whether he got kicked out of Alabama or chose to leave, that's their program and that's their business. But he looked at Texas as a second chance, right? And he came to Texas with a clean slate, I hope. Nothing being held against him, made a mistake. Third strike, right? So I would talk to him about the Alabama situation, maybe a strike 1 or strike 2, or strike, no strikes or 1 strike. The situation with the vehicle to me is strike 2. And I just had that conversation with him. Like, Ojai, I'm going to suspend you indefinitely. Hopefully it's a shorter suspension because I just want him to get through to him that, hey, teammates matter, situations matter, but mostly you matter to this organization. I'm suspending you because I need you to take this seriously, because the next time you're in my office and we're having this conversation, you're going to have to go find another place to play football. So I was glad that he didn't get removed from the team. I'm glad they're just kind of slow rolling this thing and suspending him and seeing how kind of taking some time to analyze the situation and figure out where they want to go from here. But I'm glad he didn't get thrown off the football team, and they're gonna indefinitely, like you said, tells us nothing. Is it a week full of practices? Is it the first game? Is it a half a season? But it just gives him time to reflect and it gives the coaching staff time to think about what they want to do if and when, or if the situation ever arises again. But I was glad he wasn't suspended. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, it's about opportunities, man. He's probably one of the most, they're saying here, with size and speed, he's probably one of the most gifted, talented wide receivers in the country. He was ranked like number 1 or 2 coming, on 3 coming out of the 2021 class. So it's there. He's a physical specimen, and it's really just figuring out how to play as a pro. Go in, watch film, go do what you got to do, have fun. There's nothing to say that you can't have fun. Hell, you live in Austin, right? Go have fun, do what you got to do. But when it's time to be responsible for your actions and come out a better player, man. He's got all of the upside to be, go on to the NFL in 2 years. And I think start Steve Sarkisian having a conversation with his family, like you were talking about, and sitting him down and with him and his family and having that conversation. Eventually it's got to hit home. And if it doesn't hit home and he doesn't change, then you have to do what's best for the program itself. Yeah. Not for one person.
Exactly. Support the player first. And have a heart-to-heart with them. Let them know, hey, this is where we stand. You're a grown adult, and I don't want to see you in my office again for this kind of stuff. And then the ball's in his court, right? You support him the best way you can. Brennan Marion's on his side. Steve Sarkisian's on his side. He's got teammates that have his back. Just make smart decisions, right? Go to class, study hard, do what you're supposed to do when you're not in the classroom. You study hard in the film room, and then when it's time to go practice and play, you go practice and play. Because like you said, he does provide something that not every kid in this program has at that position, that size and speed, and the ability to bust big ones. every time he catches the ball. So take advantage of the talent you got. Do what you got to do. Focus and get after it.
Damn, man, we were going to go 30 minutes. We actually went an hour. There's 145 people watching here at 11 o'clock this morning. I didn't think it was going to be this many people when I called Jeremy this morning at 10 o'clock and said, hey, man, let's just can we just would you like to have coffee, man, and do a live this morning and talk about what we want to see coming out of the scrimmage tonight, man? So to have 145 people on here watching at 11 o'clock in the morning is we appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it. If you haven't hit that like button, you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe. 146 people in here currently, 64 likes. Please hit that like button, man. We greatly appreciate it. So any further thoughts, man? I think it's tonight. The scrimmage is tonight. So I think the reports will probably come out a little later. It'll come out a little later tonight, first thing tomorrow morning. But we're definitely excited. I'm going to tell you, as I continue to watch these games, you get frustrated. My wife's like, why are you screaming at the television of a game that was last year? Because it still frustrates me. You know, when you let somebody, 4th and 1 run for 70 yards for a touchdown, it's frustrating. But definitely excited to see what comes out of tonight's scrimmage. Definitely enjoyed everyone's comments this morning. Like Jeremy said, it's fire. I'm sitting here sweating. We haven't went out and mowed grass yet.
No, but that's happening. I lost my train of thought there for a second. But pop-up shows, turn your notification bells on. If you don't have them on already, hell, Clint's liable to call me after the scrimmage and hear a comment from Steve Sarkisian that he wants to address. So again, we got linebackers coming out probably later today or tomorrow. Please tune in for that one. But turn your notification bells on because these pop-up shows may happen as we get closer to the season. Again, this was planned about 10 minutes before we jumped on here. The wife had time to build the thumbnail to throw into YouTube. We had time to set the studio up, and we were talking. So really appreciate you. I want to say it's 7 o'clock for scrimmage time. It's either 6 or 7. I know that 100%. I want to say, now that I'm talking, I think I want to say 6, but I'm like 95% sure it's not going to be televised. Probably going to have, like you said, the message boards on 247 inside Texas, Orange Bloods. Probably going to be having somebody there making comments. So check that out. We'll be on those message boards trying to get as much information as we possibly can. Probably try to talk to some folks offline, get as much information as we possibly can. As Josh said, please join that inner circle. He says, stop hating. I'm not going to say that. But do really appreciate the members that we do have. I think we're currently at 25. I'd love to see that family grow. Again, we got a lot of cool stuff coming in season for those guys. Matter of fact, we're probably going to push linebackers out to the inner circle as a sneak preview before we push it out to the mass audience of YouTube. So, yeah, we're doing everything we can.
Scooter Landerson said we want a post-scrimmage video.
Hey, let me go cut the grass first. Let me go cut the grass first, Scooter, and we'll start talking about Like
if we don't want, go ahead, Jeremy.
No, if Steve Sarkisian comes out in his press conference and gives us a lot of good stuff to talk about, which I'm sure he will, you might see one tonight. You might see one at the same time tomorrow. Like I said, we're driven to promote this channel, and we're fired up about this football season. We're fired up about how this family's grown over the last couple of months. Again, we haven't stopped. We're going to go 4K before opening day. Right now, we're at 3744, so 256 subscribers short of our goal of September 3rd. And if we hit it before September 3rd, we're going to push our goal back even further. So please support us. Please help us out. Yeah, there's no telling when we might come back on and talk post-scrimmage.
Yeah, so I think we're probably going to, after the scrimmage tonight, we probably send out to some DMs to some folks that are going to be at that football game as well, maybe to get their insight. There are some guys that some family members out there that we do know that I'm not afraid to send a DM out and say, hey, how did the scrimmage go?
He done messed up his mic again. Stop touching your mic. Hey, I'll pull up this. I don't know if it's true, but it says Clint is too hot for cutting grass. That's what Timothy Wooten had to say. I'm not sure if he's cutting it or if Carla's cutting or what she's got him doing today, but he cut his mic off again. You want to say something? Hey, you're good, I think. Hey, you're good. Now you can't hear us. All right, yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Are you on?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Damn, man, I'm having issues this morning. All right, it's all good. I apologize about that. So I think we're going to end the show. I mean, go ahead and do the outro, or did you do it already?
No, get it.
All right, man.
Plug yourself.
All right, bro, I'm plug myself. Here we go. Y'all can find us on Facebook. Thank you for listening. As always, please hit that like button and subscribe. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk, on Instagram at Texas Football Talk, and on Twitter at Texas Football Talk. We appreciate you listening as always, and y'all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.